In the previous episode, Leping and Elizabeth enjoy the fight between Blue Sword and Jayla. However, the red-haired girl Anna is really shocked after seeing that Jayla break Blue Sword B rank weapon with just one punch. Next, on the other side, the yellow-haired man asks one of the big shot elders, Barry from the Sword Saint Guild, if he needs him to stop the fight between Blue Sword and Jayla. His name is Grey Sword Ash, and he is from the Sword Saint Guild. However, Elder Swordberry from the Sword Saint Guild disagrees, explaining that the two of them are more than enough to handle Jayla, and he asks Elder Burrs what he thinks. Elder Burrs replies that he doesn't know, he will think about it if the situation gets out of hand. He is the Card Guild president and a former member of the Sword Saint Guild, and he is a 4-star demon sect realm. His name is Boss, the old man we saw at the beginning of this manhwa. He received card skills from Leping, became powerful, and created his own guild. Grey Sword thinks that Senior Burrs is indeed someone who deeply hates the Dark Guild. Just hearing about becoming an apostle makes him so angry that he can hardly hold back and even trembles all over. Grey Sword misunderstands everything. Mr. Burrs doesn't tremble in anger because Jayla became the apostle of the Dark Guild, but he trembles in fear. After seeing Leping and Elizabeth, he can't believe his eyes, thinking, how could it be possible? How did those two get here? On the other hand, Leping asks Elizabeth after seeing the fight between Blue Sword and Jayla if they don't meet their expectations. What do you think we should do with them? Elizabeth replies without any second thought, saying if they don't meet their expectations, then they will kill them all without wasting any time. Mr. Burrs, after hearing the conversation between Leping and Elizabeth, gets more shocked, thinking, that must be it. Mr. Leping is here to check whether I have used his card and wheat tea on the right path. In order to live up to Mr. Leping's gift, fortunately, after I mastered the basic abilities, I actively hunted down the evil apostles and devoted myself to maintaining the peace of the heroes' continent. However, can these two of them really take this insignificant achievement seriously? However, Jayla, after becoming an apostle of the Dark Guild, gets really powerful, saying Blue Sword is a little bug in front of him, and he will slap him to death. Blue Sword is really surprised after seeing Jayla's power, and he doesn't have any other choice. He has to use his secret technique, but he is really nervous because he doesn't know if he can control it now. However, he can't doubt himself, he remembers his master's teachings. If you want to enter a state of selflessness, you must abandon distracting thoughts. However, before Blue Sword can execute his technique, Jayla uses his overwhelming strength to attack the ground and starts playing with the ground just like rubber. He uses this to attack Blue Sword, who is really shocked after seeing this. However, before Blue Sword could react, Jayla started attacking him, sending Blue Sword into the air. Jayla planned to capture him with his ground-controlling technique by creating walls around him. Blue Sword, confused and unable to react, found himself captured in a stone cage before he could do anything. Jayla, after capturing Blue Sword, explained that the Giant Bear Guild doesn't just specialize in physical enhancement but also excels in earth magic, comparable to high-level magician guilds. He started laughing at Blue Sword's predicament. Suddenly, Jayla noticed a blue energy emanating from the stone cage, prompting him to quickly retreat. Upon closer inspection, he realized that his hand was already cut off. Confused and trembling in fear, he wondered what had just happened. Blue Sword utilized his magic sword energy to cut the stone cage into tiny pieces, showcasing his power. However, he is still murmuring his teacher's words about not being surprised or confused to reach a state of selflessness. Blue Sword demonstrated exceptional skill. However, Jayla, enraged and disregarding Blue Sword's teachings, only wanted to kill him, declaring that he would kill him today no matter what. Despite the threat, Blue Sword remained undeterred, using his magic sword energy to cut Jayla's right leg. Jayla started crying in pain after Blue Sword's decisive move. After cutting his leg, Blue Sword offered Jayla one last chance to surrender. Jayla, still unwilling to give up, vowed to kill Blue Sword today. Jayla started remembering his master's advice about using gears to enhance strength for the competition and avoiding forbidden drugs unless necessary. He expressed surprise at the powerful skills of the people from the Sword Saint Guild. Should I use the power of forbidden drugs? If I can't bear it, I will suffer backlash. However, Blue Sword points his sword towards to Jayla, saying, while you are conscious, voluntarily give up the power of the Dark Guild, and I can spare your life. But Jayla doesn't want to give up without a fight, so he uses the power of forbidden drugs. He plans to transform into a complete Demon King and kill Blue Sword and all the members of the Sword Saint Guild. However, while still contemplating this, Blue Sword uses his magic sword energy and cuts Jayla's head without any second thought. The masked girl who is still trapped in the cage is thinking, Can she really do it? Can she really win this fight? However, she is not confident in herself, contemplating the idea of surrendering. She is Alina, Mr. Boss' daughter. We show them the beginning of the manhwa when Leping's robot dog saves them from the Dark Guild. In the Card Guild, Alina is meditating and training with her card, which she received from Leping. She drinks barley tea and breaks through from a 5-star demon spirit to a 1-star great demon spirit. After the breakthrough, she thinks meditation and entering this space use up a lot of mental power. Fortunately, this magic barley tea helps calm down my thoughts and prevents me from losing myself in that universe of poker. It keeps me in complete harmony. The effects are remarkable. I was able to break through to the great demon spirit realm in a short time despite my mediocre aptitude. While she is still thinking about this, she suddenly hears a door opening sound. The one who is on the is Mr. Boss. He comes back home after completing his work. Alina is really happy after seeing her dad, saying, "Dad, you're finally back." But she is really curious about the meeting between Sword Saint Guild and her dad. She asks what happened with the Sword Saint Guild and if he's okay. Mr. Boss explains, the crisis of the Dark Guild's invasion has been resolved, but the internal issues of the Sword Saint Guild are much more serious than I anticipated. I didn't see the Sword Master personally this time. After hearing this, Alina asks Mr. Boss, so what should they do now? Without the recognition of the Sword Saint Guild, they won't be able to develop this region and recruit members to elevate Mr. Leping's Card Guild. However, Mr. Boss replies, even if I didn't see the Sword Master, I helped them repel the Dark Guild, and I got something unexpected. So, Mr. Boss opens the bag he is carrying and shows them to Alina. After seeing them, Alina instantly recognizes them, saying they are the Dark Gears of Great Apostles. However, she is really surprised after seeing so many of them. She explains that she is now at the Great Demon Spirit level, so she should be able to purify them in one day. But she is really confused and asks Mr. Boss if these are the unexpected gains he's talking about. Mr. Boss says no and shows the invitation card to Alina, explaining that this is what he's talking about. The Sword Saint Guild gave us a direct qualification for the guild competition finals. Alina is really surprised after seeing the guild competition card. Mr. Boss reassures Alina, saying, you don't have to worry. As long as you participate and win, our card guild will be recognized. However, Alina is really nervous after hearing Mr. Boss's words. She explains that she is not good at all. The participants in the past have all been geniuses from many guilds, with strength at least at the Demon Ancestor level. She has just been promoted to the Great Demon Spirit level. She is afraid that not only will she not be able to represent them well, but they will lose face too. It feels like they are deliberately making things difficult for them. However, Mr. Boss doesn't care about this. He says to Alina, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Having more confidence and determination is the most important thing. We are not the same as before. When the time comes, your father will bring you Mr. Leping's treasure deck, and this level gap will make no difference. In the present, Alina, who is still thinking about her father's words, realizes that her father told her to bring in Mr. Leping's cards. However, with her strength, she can use no more than 6 at a time. The rest of the battle has to be done with replica cards only, which will greatly decrease her attack strength. But, in order to promote Mr. Leping properly, she can't back down. Determination is the most important. After saying this, she gets his cards from his pocket and uses the card slash to free herself from the cage. After that, she slowly starts approaching Blue Sword. However, as she approaches Blue Sword, it is revealed that Galoa is still alive after his head was cut off. Blue Sword gets really impressed after seeing Alina's power, explaining, it was a good strategy to hide your power and only take action at the end. However, he doesn't consider Alina his opponent by any means and asks her to admit defeat now, saying that their guild owes her a favor. He doesn't wish to hurt her, this is his final warning. However, before he completes his words, Alina attacks him with her card skill. After seeing Alina's card skill, the Dark Guild president is really surprised. He asks, what is this weapon? I've never seen a weapon like this. Alina, without wasting any time, slashes his cards and uses the poker flying sword technique to attack Blue Sword. However, Blue Sword figures out Alina's strategy, explaining, she just wants to distract me with this fancy attack. The real goal is to hit me with another move. However, Blue Sword, without wasting any time, jumps towards Alina to attack her. He doesn't want to give Alina any chance for a counterattack. Alina gets really shocked and realizes that Blue Sword already saw through his plan. Luckily, she dodges Blue Sword's attack in the right time. Without wasting any time, she uses her card slash to attack Blue Sword as many times as she can. However, Alina's attacks don't work on Blue Sword. He jumps into the air and attacks Alina. Nevertheless, Alina dodges Blue Sword's attack and counters with her card slash skill. Blue Sword uses his sword Kai to dodge Alina's attack, but Alina uses her card lock to stop Blue Sword from attacking. The audience is really excited after seeing the fight between Blue Sword and Alina. They think the card guild's fighting style is quite unique. Blue Sword is surrounded by cards, and they wonder what he will do to resolve this. Alina has already locked Blue Sword's skills with her card lock skill. After seeing this, Blue Sword asks Alina, "Do you consume my sword Kai with this power?" However, he doesn't care, saying, "It's pointless. If you force me to take this seriously, you have to be ready to be killed." Alina, after hearing this, replies, of course, she knows the card lock can't restrain him for long, but it is enough to buy her time for the card slash to be complete. And she got the most powerful spades, so she releases her cards to prepare a powerful move. In the next moment, the cards transform into a spades dragon. After seeing this, the people watching the fight between Blue Sword and Alina get really shocked and ask, "What's that? She has so many attacks, first a lock and now a summon too." One of them says, "This is worth recording and investigating." The Dark Guild president is really surprised after seeing Leping's card's power, thinking, through different combinations, many fighting methods are being displayed. Which masterful craftsman made these cards? Leping gets really surprised after seeing that people in this world also know how to play cards. He asks Elizabeth to look, and they are playing cards. It turns out that people outside also know how to play cards and can use them to fight. Meanwhile, Alina uses his Spades Dragon skill and attacks Blue Sword. After seeing this powerful move, Blue Sword uses his maximum output of sword energy to create a big blue bird and uses it to counter-attack Alina's Spades Dragon. Blue Sword's attack with the blue bird is powerful, destroying Alina's Spades Dragon without any problem and causing some harm to Alina. Luckily, Alina creates a shield with her cards on time and barely defends herself. She thinks Blue Sword is really strong, and as a 3-star demon spirit, it is still difficult for her to make up for the gap in level using only replica cards. To win, she must use treasure cards, but she is nervous about using them because if she can't control the power well, she might end up harming him. Blue Sword is really impressed with Alina because she is forcing him to use his full power. He jumps into the air to attack Alina. However, Alina creates a shield with her cards to defend herself. Unfortunately, it is not enough to stop Blue Sword's attack, and he sends Alina flying across to another corner. Blue Sword approaches Alina, saying it's over and she lost. Alina admits defeat, thinking, forget it, there's no need to continue, just fighting to this level is enough. Suddenly, something hits Blue Sword on the head from behind. Blue Sword, looking in pain, doesn't know what just happened and wonders, what's this? His eyes start changing. Alina also gets shocked after seeing this. The one who attacked Blue Sword is Jayla's head. He is controlling Blue Sword's body. However, he is not Jayla, he is a great apostle who was in Jayla's body. After Jayla's death, he finally hatched. After that, he wants to control Blue Sword's body as he really likes Blue Sword's body. He can use the sword energy in this body. Gob the Goblin explains to the audience about the current situation, saying Jayla's head suddenly jumped up and took control of King's body. The scene seemed a bit out of control. The Great Apostle starts attacking the audience, but shield barriers are protecting everyone. However, people start to run as the protective shield is about to burst. Everyone is really shocked after seeing that the guy from the Sword Saint Guild had turned into an apostle. Red-haired girl Anna is also shocked after seeing that Blue Sword turned into a Dark Guild apostle. Yellow-haired girl asks Sister Anna what they should do now. The man who is smoking is also really surprised by this unexpected show. Leping is also really surprised. This isn't what they expected. He asks Elizabeth if they are going to step in and help. Elizabeth replies saying no, explaining that if Leping wants to rule the world, he must learn to adapt to such small scenes of temporary changes. Otherwise, how will he be able to manage such a big world in the future? Elizabeth asks Leping to just wait and see what happens first. Leping doesn't say anything and agrees with Elizabeth. Mr. Boss, who is thinking, realizes that both Elizabeth and Leping knew about the Apostles' invasion. They plan to see if Alina and he could settle this matter properly. He prays that Alina must perform well and satisfy Mr. Leping and Demon Queen Elizabeth. Meanwhile, the Sword Saint Guild president is thinking that Mr. Boss is getting anxious. If he steps in to save his daughter, it proves that his guild is not strong enough to deal with the Dark Guild. Now the Sword Saint Guild is recruiting new people, and he wants Mr. Boss to come back and become the new elder in Sword Saint Guild. The Great Apostle really likes Blue Sword's body, saying it's great. He is very satisfied with this body. Alina is really surprised after seeing the Dark Guild. The Great Apostle is laughing at Alina, asking what the little bastard wants to do. Alina gets his treasure card, saying if the opponent is the Dark Guild, then she doesn't need to worry so much. Alina's body starts glowing, a huge amount of magic energy surrounding her. The Great Apostle gets really scared after seeing the unknown power coming from Alina, thinking it's better to kill her immediately. He uses Blue Sword's sword energy and attacks Alina. However, Alina stops his attack. She uses her card skill and creates a sacred guardian to protect her. Leping gets really surprised after seeing Alina's face, thinking, why does this feel familiar? Meanwhile, Dwarf Guild President is really shocked after seeing Alina's card power, thinking, what's this? Compared to the cards just now, these feel even more incredible. The man with one eyeglasses is also really shocked. He has never seen an attack like this, thinking, this summoned phantom. If I remember correctly, is this the 13 holy warriors that is recorded in the books? Is it real? Sword Saint Guild President asks Mr. Boss if this is the trick he used to defeat the 6 pillar demons. Mr. Boss replies that he used a 9-card formation before, and his daughter is using only a 5-card formation. The attacks are the same but different in magical power. However, Mr. Boss hopes that it is enough to defeat the Dark Guild Apostle. Alina throws her card toward the Great Apostle, asking him to leave Blue Sword's body. Unfortunately, the Great Apostle dodges Alina's attack without any problem. However, he gets really scared after seeing the power of these cards, thinking, how come these ordinary cards have so much power? He is really impressed with Alina's power, but he doesn't want to lose his life. So, he jumps into the air, saying to Alina, you're amazing. I will come back to you after I get to know this body. I will be running away for now. Unfortunately, Alina uses her card and summons her shield guardian, commanding it to stop the Great Apostle. Then, she throws the Great Apostle to another shield guardian, and the guardians play with the Great Apostle like volleyball. The Great Apostle is really confused, not knowing what is going on, thinking he was just born and can't die here. So, he uses his strongest move, Fierce Sword. However, before he can attack Alina, she uses her guardian and traps the Great Apostle into a box. The Great Apostle is really confused after seeing this, so he tries to cut the box with his Fierce Sword. However, before he can use his skill, Alina uses her Holy Array, commanding her guardian to crush the Great Apostle. After that, the box starts getting smaller and smaller. The Great Apostle asks Alina to show some mercy. There is no need to do this. He doesn't want to die. However, Alina doesn't listen. She crushes the Great Apostle and turns him into a purple ring, saving Blue Sword. After that, she takes a sigh of relief. However, she was a little careless with this move, but luckily she defeats the Great Apostle who is more powerful than her. Meanwhile, Blue Sword doesn't look good, and Alina gives him a really good beating. Mr. Boss, after seeing this fight, thinks Leping and Elizabeth should be satisfied with this now, right? Leping is really surprised after seeing that the masked girl is Alina. He says to Elizabeth, it turns out to be Alina, no wonder she looks familiar. He asks Elizabeth if she still remembers them, the father and daughter who came to live with them a few months ago. However, Elizabeth is not looking happy. She turns her head toward Mr. Boss, saying, who told them to reveal themselves like this? Mr. Boss, after finding out that Demon Queen Elizabeth has discovered him, starts shaking in fear. He stands up from his seat and bows down toward Elizabeth and Leping, saying, you two are here, but I didn't wish to ruin your viewing experience, so I didn't disturb you. Forgive me. But suddenly, Leping also finds out about Mr. Boss. He waves his hand toward Mr. Boss, saying, Uncle Boss, as expected, you are here too. I just said I realized Alina was the one fighting. I have a lot of questions to ask you. Mr. Boss, after hearing Leping's words, thinks if Leping is dissatisfied with their card fighting skills. Meanwhile, Sword Saint Guild President, after seeing Mr. Boss like this, thinks, who is that person Boss respects so much? After Elena won the competition, Mr. Boss invited Elizabeth and Leping to a gathering. Mr. Boss asked Elizabeth and Leping to please take their seats. However, Leping was really confused, wondering why he was invited to attend this gathering again. Elizabeth replied, saying it's not a bad idea to learn more about the current affairs of the world in preparation to rule it in the future. Leping agreed with Elizabeth, saying yes, but he asked Elizabeth if next time they could simply call it an experience and omit the world domination part. Sword Saint Guild President Elder Sword congratulated Mr. Boss for winning the competition. Mr. Boss replied, saying, Elder Sword, we can discuss such small matters later. Please allow me to introduce to you the two distinguished guests first. First, this is the beneficial who saved me and my daughter from the Dark Apostle, Mr. Leping. And the lady next to him is... However, before they could say Elizabeth's name, she turned her head toward to Mr. Boss, her eyes starting to glow red. Mr. Boss and Elena, after seeing Elizabeth like this, got really scared. Both of them understood that they couldn't openly reveal Elizabeth's identity. However, Sword Saint Guild President Elder Sword asked the reason why they couldn't introduce her. Mr. Boss, who was scared and afraid of Elizabeth, didn't know what to say. Leping realized that Mr. Boss must be afraid of revealing Elizabeth's identity as the Demon Queen, as that would shake everyone. That's why he was hesitating. Leping asked Elizabeth if from now on he should call her a novice, suggesting it's better to hide who she is. Elizabeth didn't care and told Leping he could call her whatever he wanted. To make the atmosphere better, Leping took the lead and introduced himself, saying they were from a small nation in the south. He was a minister there, and they could just call him Leping. As for the person next to him, that's their princess. However, the butler standing behind Elder Sword mentioned that a princess from the south. His hometown is there, but he doesn't seem to have heard of them. Mr. Boss agreed with Leping, saying that Leping is right, and his card skills were taught personally by him. Leping, blushing, responded, "You're exaggerating. I don't have much talent with cards, but Uncle Boss is the best at it. Actually, I would like to ask Uncle Boss for some advice on swordsmanship too." The yellow-haired girl gets really surprised after hearing this, saying to Blue Sword, "Did he hear this? He wants to learn swordsmanship after giving such powerful cards. What on earth is he thinking?" Blue Sword asks her to be careful. Elder Sword is here, and it's not the time for them to speak. Meanwhile, Elena is really nervous, and she asks Leping if he saw her battle in the square, wondering if her card skills were satisfactory. However, Leping doesn't know what she wants to say. He doesn't know what skills she's talking about. Mr. Boss asks Leping if there was something lacking in her performance and encourages him to be honest. Leping makes a serious face, saying he doesn't have anything to comment on. He just didn't expect them to use his cards like this. Mr. Boss agrees with Leping, saying, "Of course, how could they compare to Mr. Leping? He was so self-centered that he made copies of the cards and created the guild without Leping's permission." Elena asks for forgiveness from Leping, admitting she may have disappointed him, but that's her limit. However, Leping tells them not to be sorry. If they do it like this, more people should be able to participate. He finds it very good. Elena, after hearing this, asks him if Mr. Leping is saying that most people are actually like them regulars, so their card strategy is suitable for them to learn. Leping agrees, saying it's more suitable for promoting the guild. However, he mentions that this is a magical world, and he really envy them for their magic. Suddenly, one of the Sword Saint Guild members, let's call him Uncle Indai, starts inspecting Leping and Elizabeth, thinking it's getting more and more fun. He uses his demonic eye lens to see Leping and Elizabeth's magic power. However, he gets really surprised after seeing that one is casually exuding huge and domineering magic power, while the other is completely suppressed and doesn't reveal any magic power. Elizabeth finds out that he is using some kind of tool to inspect their power, and she is really angry. Mr. Tagore gets really scared, wondering if he has been discovered. But that's impossible. He used the demonic eye lens to observe them, and there isn't any magic reflection. What's happening? What's this strong sense of oppression? Elizabeth asks Leping that she wants to kill one of them. Leping gets really shocked after hearing this and asks her who she wants to kill. He asks Elizabeth to wait a minute, suggesting they leave any questions for the end of the gathering, thinking she shouldn't make things difficult for Uncle Boss. Elizabeth gets really happy after seeing Pudding, and her anger cools down immediately. Elder Sword asks everyone to calm down, enough chit-chat, let's go back to the topic at hand. This time, through the competition, he has invited a few people here. He wants to discuss an alliance as they urgently need to encircle and suppress the Dark Guild. So he asks Butler Ash to show them. Ash puts a bag on the table and asks everyone to take a look, explaining that these are the dark gears collected from the initial stage of the competition to the finals from each player using the Sword of Purification. Plus, Jayla from the Giant Bear Guild, it makes 30 pieces. Leping gets really surprised after seeing this because he doesn't know what dark gear is. Mr. Boss explains that as long as anyone accepts the Dark Guild's power, such gears will grow into their body. He also found such gears in the bodies of the apostles he hunted. The Dwarf Guild president is also really surprised after seeing 30 pieces, wondering if the infiltration of the Dark Guild is well spread. However, the yellow-haired girl asks everyone if Jayla passed the Sword of Purification's test before, and if he accepted the power after that. Red-haired girl Anna says no and explains that there's another possibility. The Dark Guild could have found a way to avoid the purification. Mr. Tagore tells everyone that only those with the lowest degree of fusion can be detected through purification. In the other two cases, they can basically hide in plain sight. In the first case, the fusion degree is the lowest. The host cannot bear it, and suffers the backlash, turning into a dark apostle akin to a puppet. In the second case, the host can bear it but cannot control it, turning into what they saw on the square today. Eventually, the host becomes a container that gives birth to the great apostle. In the third case, the host can fully control it and gains the power of the Demon King. Their power improves by leaps and bounds, and they become a pillar demon servant of the Dark Guild. However, no matter what kind of change it is, they must still obey the orders of the person who gave them these powers. They become the Dark Guild's loyal servant. Blue Sword asks everyone if he almost became a great apostle back then. Mr. Tagore replies that who knows, he was controlled but not fully integrated. Otherwise, with his skills, he would have become a pillar demon. Elder Sword also agrees with Mr. Tagore, saying fortunately, Mr. Boss came to help. Otherwise, he might not be able to handle this with these old bones of his. Mr. Boss is really happy to help because in the past, he used to be a member of the Sword Saint Guild, so he should help. However, Blue Sword, when the guild was in trouble, was on a mission outside and was unable to fight the Dark Guild. But today, he saw the card skills that killed the 6 pillar demons, so he is convinced of his defeat, saying Elena is really strong. However, Elena replies that, no matter how he looks at it, the main reason for her win is the powerful cards of Mr. Leping. After hearing this, the Dwarf Guild president asks Leping if he made these cards and where he learned that blacksmithing skill. Not just cards, the sword he carried on his back isn't simple either. Leping replies that he just likes to do some handiwork at home to kill some time. There's no blacksmithing involved. The Dwarf Guild president thinks that Leping is so humble, and the yellow-haired girl says that if the Sword Saint were here, the Dark Guild wouldn't dare invade. Red-haired girl Anna asks her to stop, not to talk too much. In front of everyone, Leping, after hearing this, gets really curious and asks Uncle Boss if the Sword Saint is the strongest swordsman and where the Sword Saint is now. However, Mr. Boss hesitates to answer this question, saying it might not be a good idea for him to state his opinion. After all, he's no longer a member of the Sword Saint Guild. But Elder Sword, after seeing this, says to Mr. Boss that it's okay, he can talk about the Sword Saint. Anyway, this cannot be hidden for long. Some news has begun to spread already. The Dwarf Guild president gets really surprised, wondering if the rumors he heard are true. Mr. Tagore explains that after the rebellion of the Sword Saint Guild, not only has their combat power been severely depleted, but their Sword Saint has been missing too. That's why the Dark Guild took this chance to attack. Elder Sword replies that it's true. After the Sword Saint sent information from the mountains half a year ago, there has been no information since. However, Leping is really confused and doesn't know what they are talking about. What is the rebellion? Missing. Butler Ash explains that, to be precise, he should have gone to arrest Elder Axe who betrayed the guild, but he hasn't returned yet. According to Blue Sword, in his previous mission, he was supposed to go to the mountains and help the Sword Saint according to the coordinates, but when he arrived, there was no one there. However, the yellow-haired girl is confused because the Sword Saint has been promoted to a 5-star demon sovereign 1 foot into the Demon King realm. Shouldn't it be easy to arrest the elder who has just been promoted to demon sovereign? Blue Sword says that no one doubts the power of the Sword Saint, but when he rushed to the mountains that day, his sword's tracks were everywhere. Still, when he climbed the mountain, he got really surprised after what he just saw. He saw half of the region was reduced to flat ground. It's hard to imagine what a terrifying battle they must have had there. Elder Sword explains that Elder Axe obtained a supreme magic weapon. All he knows is that it's a giant axe named Demon Burial, exuding terrifying resentment, and its power is so significant that the Elder can make up for the strength gap between him and the Sword Saint. However, according to the Dwarf Guild president, he went through all the S-class weapons forged by the Dwarf Kingdom, and he didn't find the Axe Elder Sword described. He thinks it's also a masterpiece of the Dark Guild. Leping whispers and asks Elena, he still doesn't get it. Who is this elder? Why did he betray the Sword Saint Guild? Mr. Boss explains that the president of the guild is the Sword Saint, and under the Sword Saint, there are 5 elders who assist him in handling various affairs and guiding the disciples. The person next to him is Elder Sword, in charge of swordsmanship, and there are 4 other elders: Elder Dagger, Elder Spear, Elder Shield, and Elder Axe. But as Elder Axe betrayed the guild and launched the rebellion, Elder Dagger and Elder Spear were brutally killed by him. Elder Shield later died in the battle with the Pillars of the Dark Guild, so now Elder Sword is the only one with seniority in the guild. During the rebellion, many took that chance to betray them, including Elder Sword's most valued son, C. Buckthorn Terrais. Leping, after hearing the name Terrais, asks Elder Sword if he is a sword-wielding centaur, wondering if his son is actually a centaur. Then he asks about his wife, but they can't do anything as the artist does not explain about her. Let's get back to our story. So Elder Sword asks Leping if he met his son and how he is doing now. Leping, without any second thought, says, "Oh, he's dead." However, Elder Sword tells Leping that it doesn't matter anymore. This is the fate of the traitor. Now, the combination of many factors has caused the Sword Saint Guild to be in its most unstable times. So, he wants everyone to unite to fight against the Dark Guild. The Dwarf Guild president asks Elder Sword if they just provide them with weapons, the Dwarf Kingdom will have no problem. However, for AORS level weapons, due to the lack of grinding stones, it would be hard to achieve. Elder Sword, although his father is already thinking of a solution. Mr. Tagore asks everyone, "Please allow me to ask, Elder Sword, as you said, you are in your most unstable times now. Why do you think you can destroy the Dark Guild with our help?" Elder Sword replies, saying that it depends on Boss. He thinks Boss should give up on his own guild and return to serve as the vice president of the Sword Saint Guild. Mr. Boss gets really surprised and asks Elder Sword if he really wants him to serve as the vice president. However, he is afraid that it's not proper after all, he has left the guild for a while now. Elder Sword explains that Mr. Boss is more suitable than he thinks. Cards can be regarded as weapons, just like daggers and flying knives. If Mr. Boss becomes a vice president of the Sword Saint Guild, they can open a new unit and let Elena serve as the elder. However, Elena is really nervous, saying she is not qualified to be an elder of the Sword Saint Guild. Elder Sword says as long as Mr. Boss agrees, he guarantees that everything will go smoothly. The resources of the guild will be used as Mr. Boss wishes, and even he will obey his orders. Butler Ash says, "Senior Boss, the elder is truly sincere in his intentions. The vice president position means you are one person above 10,000. This is much easier than establishing your own guild. Please consider this suggestion." After that, Mr. Boss turns his head toward Leping, asking what he thinks, wondering with the aid of the Sword Saint Guild's fame, wouldn't the card skill be spread around faster? Leping gets really surprised, saying, "Uncle Boss, are you asking me for advice? There is a saying in my hometown that it's much easier to become a senior executive in a large company than starting your own. However, those who are more ambitious will choose to start their own business, so this still depends on their own personal desires. Leping is thinking, as a person with no ambition, he shouldn't be giving advice to others. But Mr. Boss misunderstands Leping's words, thinking, does he think he needs to be someone's accessory to elevate himself? If you only have that much ambition, then he is really disappointed in him. However, Mr. Boss is in a tough situation, wondering if Mr. Leping is trying to aid him, but Elder Sword is so stingy. To reject him directly on such an occasion would be not giving him face. He would offend the entire Sword Saint Guild. Elder Sword asks Mr. Boss if he is still dissatisfied, feel free to put forward any conditions. Mr. Boss stands up from his seat and says, Elder Sword, you don't need to say anything else. I established my own guild not because I wanted to pursue fame and wealth, but because I wanted to elevate my card skills, Mr. Boss states. He then asks Leping if he can see that his will is firm. Elder Sword asks Mr. Boss if he has thought this through. However, Elder Sword is really surprised and can't feel the aura of this strong man called Leping, suggesting that being taught by him must be an excuse to hide his background. Leping replies, saying yes, good conditions, but he thought that he could rely on his connections to Uncle Boss to learn swordsmanship from the Sword Saint Guild. After that, Mr. Boss refuses to return to the guild, but assures Elder Sword not to worry, explaining that it's his responsibility to eliminate the Dark Guild, and his guild will fully support the Sword Saint Guild in the future. Elder Sword agrees with Mr. Boss, saying he understands. However, according to the agreement, the Sword Saint Guild will recognize the legitimacy of Mr. Boss's card guild. Leping doesn't know what to say. He can only express that Uncle Boss is very courageous. However, for Mr. Boss, the most important thing is Leping's satisfaction, and they have worked really hard to satisfy Leping. Meanwhile, Elder Sword asks Dwarf Guild President, Prince Brian, when will the king return from seclusion, as the provision of A and S level weapons can greatly enhance their combat power. Prince Brian replies that he can't tell Elder Sword, but the shortage of grinding stones is a big issue, and the entire kingdom can't find a proper substitute. The Aristotle Kingdom refuses to cooperate, so his father is researching in seclusion. However, they can't do anything right now. Elder Sword doesn't know what to do, so he asks Mr. Tagore what he thinks about the request for the weapons and combatants spell. Mr. Tagore is a neutral party, but if he just casts spells for Elder Sword, it won't be a big issue. Elder Sword then asks everyone to reach a mutual understanding of their plan. He suggests that in 2 months, they will gather their forces, try their best to solve the issues at hand, and asks if anyone has questions. Suddenly, Leping raises his hand and asks Elder Sword if he can join. Elder Sword gets really surprised and asks Leping if he means he wants to join the battle against the Dark Guild too. Leping replies, saying no. What he means is Elder Sword Guild recruiting people? He wants to sign up to learn swordsmanship. Although he has been idle for a long time, it's not too late to start learning again, right? Mr. Boss asks Leping if he is joking and why he wants to learn swordsmanship. Leping explains that it was Princess Elizabeth who arranged for him to do this. As for why, they have to ask her. Mr. Boss and Elena, after seeing Elizabeth, do not dare to ask Leping that his plan makes sense. Elder Sword agrees with Leping, but there are many kinds of swordsmanship, so he asks Leping which one he wants to learn and what his magic level is. Leping replies that he tested it before, and it seems to be very low, explaining that he is not very good at magic. Butler Ass says that if Leping is not good with magic, he will have no way of using the magic sword taught by Elder Sword. After hearing this, Leping asks if there are no ordinary swordsmanship that doesn't need magic power. Elder Sword replies that of course there is. However, there's only one person who has mastered this kind of swordsmanship, and that person is the president of the Sword Saint Guild, Sword Saint. If Leping finds her, she'll definitely teach him. Mr. Boss also agrees with Elder Sword, saying indeed, he's afraid only the ones qualified to teach Leping are the Sword Saint. Leping, after hearing this, starts crying, thinking the Sword Saint is missing, and how can he find her? Obviously, they think he's not worthy and refuse to help him. Suddenly, Mr. Tagore asks everyone to wait, uses some kind of magic spell, and suddenly a book appears. He writes something in that book, and suddenly the magic spell starts floating in the air. He says that it just so happens that he has recorded some sword skills spells, so maybe they can help Leping. He gives those spells to Leping, who gets really happy and asks Mr. Tagore how to use them. Meanwhile, Elizabeth has finished eating her pudding, and Leping asks her to look at the spell that records swordsmanship skills. However, Elizabeth doesn't pay any attention to Leping and instantly goes back to business. She gets rid of this bug that's acting clever in front of her. Meanwhile, on the other side, in the desert, a fight is going on. The one who is fighting is the Sword Saint Chichai Saugus, the president of the Sword Saint Guild. She asks Elder Axe to come out and not hide. Elder Axe asks her, "What is your problem? What are you trying to do by pestering me?" She replies that she must clear up his crime of joining with the Dark Guild and eliminate him today. So she uses her Sword Kai technique and attacks Elder Axe. However, Elder Axe uses his demonic axe to block the Sword Saint's attack. Elder Axe uses the power of the demonic axe to counterattack against the Sword Saint, but she dodges his attacks without any problem. Elder Axe says that as the integration between him and the demon burial becomes deeper, the Sword Saint's threat level becomes lower. Soon, it will be his turn to harm the Sword Saint. However, the Sword Saint does not care. She warns Elder Axe that if he continues with his stubbornness and unrepentance, he will soon be completely controlled by this axe and lose himself, asking him to wake up and accept reality. However, Elder Axe doesn't care if he's losing himself, explaining that after experiencing this supreme power, he will know losing himself is a privilege. It'll be all fine soon. He asks the demon burial to take over his body, and suddenly Elder Axe's body starts changing. He becomes a female. After the demon burial takes control over Elder Axe's body, she says, finally coming out, resentment. "You dare to abandon me? I won't let you go."